Hello students, welcome to the video lecture for Module 2. We're going to cover the 5-step translation process and common mistakes made by beginner translators. In this presentation, we're going to cover the purpose of translation, why do we do what we do, the 5-step translation process. We're going to cover false cognates, what are called in Espanol falsos amigos, and we're going to look at some costly translation mistakes in history. What is the purpose of translation? Why do we do what we do? The purpose of translation is to convey a message from one language, the source language, to another, the target language. We cover what the source language and target languages are in a prior video, so go back and watch that in Module 1. Therefore, we don't translate words, we translate meaning. And you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. You're going to hear this in the industry, you're going to hear this among colleagues as you become more versed in the translation interpretation world. We do not translate words, we translate meaning. Burn this into your mind. We do not translate words, we translate meaning. This will make your life so much easier. This will make your translations and your interpretation infinitely better. Let's look at the 5-step translation process. First, you review the topic or text. Then you do the initial translation. You review the accuracy of your translation. You take a break, and then you refine the translation. Let's look at each of these steps. When you review the topic, you look at the text. You look for any difficult words, any idioms that are being used. You look at the writing style. Is it a technical document? Is it a conversational text that you are translating? And if you do not understand something, ask. You will usually have a supervisor, a boss, somebody who assigned you the translation, a contact person. That is very, very important. Because we are translating meaning and not words, if you do not understand something, you do not know what it means. How can you translate a meaning that you do not understand? So if you do not understand something, ask. It's okay to ask. You are not supposed to know everything. You are an expert in the translation process. You're not an expert in the field that you're translating for necessarily. We'll talk more about this later. So you review the topic, you look at the text, you have an idea of what it is. Then you perform the initial translation. You translate one sentence or one phrase at a time. You look at it, you read it, you retain it in short-term memory, and you go sentence by sentence, phrase by phrase. After you finish that initial translation from top to bottom, from beginning to end, you review the accuracy of your translation. If you have a longer text, a few pages or maybe more, a book, etc., a good recommendation is to use a glossary, or if you don't get a glossary from the client or from the organization, you build a glossary. This is so you can translate the same concept the same way throughout the document. You review your translation for accuracy and completeness. Make sure you didn't skip anything. Make sure you didn't skip a line somewhere. Make sure you didn't skip a paragraph. If it's a longer document, you're so much into the translation that you might skip something. So go back, make sure you translated everything accurately and that it is complete. Then, after you do this initial translation and review, you take a break. Preferably 24 hours if possible. So if you're doing this as an employee, work on something else, do other translations, etc. Then you come back 24 hours later and look at it with fresh eyes. You'll be surprised how many mistakes you find when you look at it with fresh eyes. If you can't wait 24 hours because this is a rush translation, this needs to get out today, etc., take at least an hour. If you finish this initial translation and review before lunch, you take your lunch and then you come back and then review afterwards. It's very, very important to take a break from your translation. You'll understand why as you'll do this final step. Refine the translation. So you polish the document. You choose better words. You look at the phrasing of your rendition. Is this the best way it can be? You might read it again and find that there's a better way of saying it. And the last point there, does it feel like an original? Does your translation read like an original, like it was written in that language first? So if you're translating something from English to Spanish, does the Spanish read as if it were written by a native Spanish speaker? That's what you want to get. What are we doing when we're translating or interpreting? This is what we're doing. This is the process that's going on in our mind. First, you read to understand the source text. You keep the meaning or message of that text in your mind. You select the most appropriate vocabulary in the target language. Then you use the grammatical structure of the target language. Then you compose that meaning or message in the target language. And you make sure that the new text is worded in a natural way. This is what we're doing whether you're translating or interpreting. This is what's going on in an interpreter's mind. In number one, you're not reading it, you're listening to the source text, but you still need to understand it. You do keep the meaning or message of that text in mind. You're thinking of the most appropriate vocabulary, the best way of rendering this in the target language. You put that in the grammatical structure of the target language, and then as you say it, it's coming out of your mouth. Number 6, you are checking that what you're saying sounds natural. And during this class, we'll do some exercises to help you with that. So let's look at translation process example. You have a simple letter. Hi, Frank. How do you like your new place? Over here, it's raining cats and dogs. I want to pay you a visit soon, but plane tickets during the summer cost an arm and a leg. Maybe we can visit during the holiday break. Yours truly, Maria. Alright, so you have this letter from Maria to Frank. Very common words, right? Common words in English, nice phrases, some idioms there. So if you were to translate this literally, just translate words, right? That's what translators do, they translate words, right? So you would say, Hola Frank, okay, that's his name, so you wouldn't translate it Francisco. How do you like your new place? If you were to translate it literally, ¿Cómo te gusta tu nuevo lugar? Right? The place is lugar. How do you like? ¿Cómo te gusta? Right? But what is the phrase? What is a native way of saying this? Of writing this? ¿Qué te parece tu nuevo hogar? Not lugar, but for place. ¿Qué te parece tu nuevo hogar? Over here, it's raining cats and dogs. Aquí está lloviendo perros y gatos. No? Think. What is the equivalent in Spanish for raining cats and dogs? If you don't know, that's something that you need to look up. You need to look up idioms, phrases in both languages. Aquí está lloviendo a cántaros. That is the native way of saying it's raining cats and dogs. I want to pay you a visit soon, but plane tickets during the summer cost an arm and a leg. Another phrase right there, another idiom. Quiero pagarte una visita pronto. No, no lo creo. Pero los boletos de avión durante el verano cuestan, how do you say an arm and a leg? Quiero ir a visitarte pronto, pero los pasajes de avión cuestan un ojo de la cara durante el verano. That is the native way of saying it costs an arm and a leg. Cuesta un ojo de la cara. If you're from a different country than me, I am from Mexico originally, you might have a different phrase in your part of the world to express that something is very, very expensive. In Mexico, cuesta un ojo de la cara. You can comment in the next activity as to how they say that in your country in Spanish. Maybe we can visit. Quizás podemos visitar. ¿Visitar a quién? ¿Cómo se dice eso en español? Quizás podamos reunirnos durante las vacaciones. To visit is, what we'll see in a moment, a cognate only part-time. When you visit someone, yes, lo visitas, la visitas. But when you visit with someone, you do not say visit. So this is a part-time cognate. So sometimes it is a cognate and other times it is not. We're going to look at more of these later. So you will not translate this literally. Quizás podamos reunirnos durante las vacaciones. Yours truly? ¿Tuyo realmente o tuya realmente? No. ¿Cómo se dice yours truly? ¿Cuál es una despedida adecuada en español? atentamente. También se usa en cartas más antiguas que he visto, muy suya, en este caso, muy suyo. So pick the one that works best based on what you're trying to accomplish. And then Maria, you do want to put the accent mark there. This is a brief example of the translation process. Of course, if we wanted to review it, look for better wording, we could do that after this step. So now that I mentioned the word cognates, los cognados, let's talk about these. What are cognates? Let's look at an example. You are on vacation in France, you don't speak French, and you break your leg. You need medical assistance, and you see a sign that says Docteur. You go there and are able to get a cast. How did you know this place would provide medical assistance? So what's going on in your mind is probably, well, because doctor sounds a lot like the English word for doctor, or the Spanish word doctor. A cognate is a word that comes from the same origin as a word from a different language. Cognates between languages usually have similarities in spelling, pronunciation, and meaning. Doctor, doctor, doctor. That's a cognate. But you have to be careful because there are a lot of false cognates out there, llamados en español falsos amigos. Imagine that you have this friend, this person that calls themselves your friend, and they do many things to gain your friendship. After a while, they betray you. You trusted them. You trusted them with your secrets, you trusted them with your care, affection, your things you didn't want anybody else to know, and they betrayed you. That's what a false cognate is, in a way. You think it means something, but it turns out that it means something else. So caution, not all words that appear similar are cognates. In fact, we call these false cognates, or falsos amigos, and their use are a sign of an amateur translator or interpreter. We're going to look at some examples in a moment. Be careful. Caution. False friends, an example. P-A-N. Pan. Pan en español significa pan, bread. Pan in English es un sartén en español. So these are false friends. Just because you see that word, it doesn't mean that it means the same thing. These are really false cognates. Completely false cognates. Let's look at some more. Assist, asistir. Assist and asistir are false cognates. Assist means ayudar a alguien, contribuir a. Asistir means to attend. Cartoon, cartón. Those are false cognates. Cartoon es un chiste, es un dibujo animado. Cartón is cardboard. Exit, éxito. Exit means salida. Éxito means success. Embarrassed, embarazada. Embarrassed means avergonzado o avergonzada. Embarazada means pregnant. Library, librería. I hear this a lot in the community, so be very careful. Library means biblioteca. Librería is a bookstore. Idiom, idioma. An idiom es un modismo. Un idioma it's a language. Notice, noticia. Notice es darse cuenta. Noticia is news. Parents, parientes. Parents means padres. Parientes significa relatives. Rope, ropa. Rope is cuerda o soga. Ropa is clothes. This last one, I don't see it confused a lot, but it could be, so just be careful out there. There are more here, just pause this video to look at them. On the left two columns, you have true cognates, inglés y español, collection, colección, detail, detalle, distance, distancia, divide, dividir. These are true cognates. For the most part, of course, you'll have shades of meaning that will not match the Spanish, but for the most part, these are true cognates. The third column, you have a word actually with a false cognate actual. That is not what it means. Actually, in Spanish, means en realidad. To advertise is not advertir. es anunciar o anuncio. Advertisement, anuncio. Arm no es arma, arm es brazo. To complain no es complacer, to complain es quejarse. Conductor no es un conductor, conductor es un director. Curse no es curso, curse es maldición. Date no es dato, date es fecha. Deception no es decepción, decepción es engañar, ya hablamos de esta. Fabric no es fábrica, le falta el acento aquí. Fabric es tela. Form no es forma, mucha gente dice esto y confunde esta palabra. Form es formulario. Lecture no es lectura, lecture es una conferencia. Y ya hablamos de esta última. Library es biblioteca, no librería. Let's take a look at the costliest translation mistakes in history. There was a malpractice settlement awarded to a quadriplegic that cost $71 million. In the module, I have several links to this case right here, to this NPR article. But in essence, 18-year-old Willie Ramirez became a quadriplegic due to a hospital misdiagnosis. The settlement resulted from the mistranslation of a single word. Ramirez was brought to the hospital in a comatose state by his family. The Spanish-speaking family explained they believed he was experiencing a reaction to food poisoning, using the word intoxicado to explain that he was poisoned. In Spanish, the word refers to anything ingested that makes a person sick. The interpreter, however, translated the word as intoxicated, so the doctors treated him for a drug overdose, overlooking the real problem, which was bleeding in the brain, that continued for days, resulting in his complete paralysis. When it seemed like Japan was begging us to bomb them, but they really weren't. In July 1945, near the end of World War II, the Allied leaders met in Potsdam and drafted proposed terms to Japan's surrender, and sent them to the Japanese government for their response. While Japan was examining and weighing their options, the Japanese asked them how they would respond. The word they used, mokusatsu, can mean either no comment or we're ignoring them with contempt. The context of the situation made it clear to the Japanese media that they meant no comment, but American translators used the contemptuous response. The translation error directly influenced President Truman's decision to use the atom bomb and made it seem more necessary than it would have otherwise. It's hard to imagine the stakes being higher for a translation error, and it's hard to imagine any more dire consequences via the NSA. Something that you should look at in any question that you have, any doubt that might come with your translation is, what is the context? What's going on? Remember, we do not translate words, we translate meaning. How do you get meaning? You get meaning of a word or a phrase from the context. Very, very important. Now let's take a look at some funny translation mistakes. These have some consequences, but not nearly as disastrous as the two previous ones. There's a sign that says no hay lugar. Okay, that makes perfect sense in Spanish. But in English they put there is no place. No gritar, do not cry. Well, this is a mistranslation of one of the meanings of gritar. El grito de independencia, por ejemplo. That evening of September 16 of 1810, cuando el cura Miguel Hidalgo dio el grito de independencia, that in English is known as the cry of independence. So this, again, is a part-time cognate, which makes this rendition funny. Do not cry. This is, I believe, Italian. Don't hold me to that, but it looks like Italian. I do not speak Italian or read Italian. But it says non da resto, which I think it means does not give change. This looks like a pay station for a parking lot. And it does not give change. But in English they said does not rest. Which is true, no, machines do not rest. But that's not the meaning. We do not translate words, we translate meaning. Prohibido arrojar nada dentro del sanitario. So they translated that into English. It is forbidden to throw nothing down the toilet. So I guess we must throw something, because you cannot not throw something. And you have papas fritas chica, translated as fries girl. Chica meaning size, but here they translated the other meaning of chica meaning girl. finally, cuarto sucio, fourth dirty. Cuarto, of course, meaning room, not primero, segundo, tercero y cuarto, but it was mistranslated here. Alright, so that's it for Module 2. Thank you.